Barguments. 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 Barguments.
Welcome into another edition of Barguments, the podcast. I'm your host, Dan Levy, and with me is a voiceover legend. You've heard him as Porky Pig, Tweety, and Marvin the Martian, and also Luke Skywalker in a ton of Star Wars video games. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to welcome into the podcast Bob Bergen. Bob, thanks so much for jumping on with me. I appreciate it, sir.
I got a question before we start.
I like it already. Right. Throw it my way.
So I know the title of this is Barguments. Am I supposed to be drinking right now?
If you wanted to, you always can. I've never turned it down, but the more people drink, the more the bargaining can go a little bit nuttier than it's supposed to. But have at it if you want one. Have at it.
Well, it's only noon in Los Angeles, and you know I have no problem imbibing, but before 4 or 5 o'clock, even on a Sunday, it ain't gonna happen. But I did have a lot of coffee this morning, so I'm well caffeinated.
The adage is always, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, Bob. You can be. It could be. I mean, right now for me, it's 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. So we can just go ahead and just do the time savings, the daylight savings time, a couple more hours.
There you go.
And you're right back at it. No problem. By the way, before we even launch into this, it's a question I've asked some people before. Do you remember the first time, your first drink ever, your first alcoholic beverage? How old you were? Circumstances? What do you remember yours?
Yeah. I was such a square kid. It was my 21st birthday.
Really?
I never tried a drop of alcohol in high school. I never hung out with friends who drank. To this day, I've never tried marijuana because as a voice actor, I just didn't want the smoke to go down my throat.
Interesting.
And I've had people say to me, "Oh, but dude, you know, you can do gummies." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't need that." But I will tell you, Dan, since 21, I've made up for a lot of lost time.
Well, like I said, I didn't know I was going to do voiceovers when I was a youngin'. I moved around a lot as a kid. My dad got different jobs. So I was born in Alabama. We moved to then New York, Connecticut, and then we moved to Omaha, Nebraska. And then while I was in Omaha, my voice dropped when I was 16. I was doing telemarketing of all things, and that's when my boss told me he thinks he can hear me on the radio because he was listening into the calls, and I thought he was going to yell at me for not really doing my job the way I should have been, and he's like, You should do radio. And so I was like, okay, let's do that. So that's how I kind of got into this business. Before then, I had no idea. You were a completely different approach. You knew exactly what you wanted to do from a young age. How did you know voiceover was that thing for you?
I didn't know voiceover was that thing. I just knew I wanted to do voices for cartoons. I didn't know this was acting. I didn't know this was a career. I didn't know that that other people did this. Other than when I was a kid and I started to learn how to read, and I would see at the end or at the opening credits of a Looney Tunes cartoon, voice characterizations Mel Blanc. So I was like, oh, well, I got to be him. I got to do that. And I didn't know that people could do this for a living. I just knew that I could do a pretty good Porky Pig. I could do a pretty good Yogi Bear. I could do a pretty good Popeye. Now, the truth was I couldn't because my voice hadn't changed. But in my head, I thought I could. So I got lucky that my dad moved the family to LA when I was 14. And that's when I kind of found out, oh, this is acting. This is a career. There are other people that do this. But, you know, if I didn't have the passion as a little kid, I don't think I would have had the drive as a teenager to pursue this.
I think we've all had that kind of like, ooh, cartoons looks fun. That looks like something I would like to do. And in fact, I'm not in the level that you are as far as a voiceover talent is. I'm not even in the same classroom as you. But because I do it and I am visible online to a lot of other people, I will get 3 to 4 messages a day on social media. How do I get in the business? People say I have a really good voice. I want to do cartoons. I want to do video games and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It is not easy at all. I've been doing it now for over 15 years, and I still feel like I am just learning what this is. And one of the better ways it's been described to me is that radio is like college, And voiceovers is like getting your doctorate's degree. It's past a master's degree. It's like getting a doctorate because it really is how to act. And that's something that's that doesn't get conveyed very often, that it's acting, not so much. You're not just voicing, you're actually that person. And that part is not easy for a lot of people to take, is it?
Well, the thing is, there's no such thing as a good voice. There's no such thing as a bad voice. There are only good actors and bad actors. And the problem is, for the radio people, radio is very stylized. There's nothing real about it. It is, you're playing the persona of the person that speaks as the 3-4 hour branding voice of this station, be it top 4. We talked about this yesterday, be it top 40 or sports talk or rap or country. And that's not authentic you. That is the you on the radio, where voiceover is really authentic you. Even in a cartoon, they're looking for authenticity in acting. And it's not about using your voice. It's about using your acting skills. We all have a voice. Everybody on the planet, most everybody on the planet has a voice, but not everybody on the planet has acting skills. And just because you've used your voice, I mean, I've had people, because I teach, I've had people contact me and say, I've been a singer for the last 20 years. I sing in my church choir, and I do community theater, and I should do voiceover. And so my stock answer to that is, well, a person making 6 figures in voice acting can't necessarily or won't necessarily have the skills to sing in your church. So it's just your mouth. The only similarity is, the only common denominator is they both use their mouth. But how they use it, what skills they use, what training they have, apples and oranges.
It's funny you should say the singing because of the voice that I have when I do speak in public, and when I go out to any place, and if I go to the gym and I'm talking to somebody will always say, "Oh my God, your voice. I bet you sing very well. I bet you do this." I'm like, actually, I have no idea how to sing. I've never trained to sing. I'm sure if I went somewhere, I would just start at the beginning like everybody else, but I am not a singer at all. I can imitate some people on karaoke, but that's as good as it goes. But like you said, when it comes to those skills, have you ever met anybody that has been able to not be trained and just come right in and do it? I mean, I think everybody has this idea that I got to go get trained, I got to go get coached, and it could take several years. Have you ever had somebody who just was so naturally good, they just walked in and started like crushing?
Like raw talent?
Yeah.
I've seen the raw talent, but they lack technique. So I'll see somebody come up to the mic the first time I coach with them, or in the days when I would do workshops, and the first moment out of their mouth, I'm like, oh, it's just a matter of time. But what they now need to do is study acting, study improv, and marry the technique with their God-given talent. The difference between a trained actor and a non-trained actor is this. A trained actor will make a choice. A non-trained actor will make a guess. You can't guess at this. You have to have the technique to make a solid choice, because you've got to be able to repeat your skills, your talent at will consistently. And without the ability or the training to be able to do that, you're just going to guess every time. For instance, you might do a brilliant take at a session, but the director goes, "Oh, so sorry, technical glitch on our end. We had your mic off. Do it again exactly the same way." Well, if you don't know how to do it exactly the same way, then you lack the skills to be able to compete right now. And I'm sure you have been told by people, you've got a great voice, you should do voiceover.
Every day, and I always tell them, I wish it was that easy. Just say people that...
Well, no, I can tell you right now, you never hear that from an agent or a casting director.
Never.
You'll hear it from a bank teller. You'll hear it from the person at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear it from random strangers hearing you talk in a movie theater. None of these people are in the business. They just hear what sounds like an interesting, marketable voice. I'm telling you right now, agents don't go to a movie and say, you should do voiceover.
No.
They never do.
No.
Because they know it's about acting, not about the sound.
In fact, I mean, I get it so much, but it's like, because I do radio as well, I'll have people that I know, friends or family, that'll just say, "I can't believe you don't have your own show. With that voice, how do you not have your own show?" And I was like, if it's that easy, then everybody would be doing it. Of course, you don't think I've thought to myself, I should have my own show. You don't think I've thought to myself, I want to be $1 million voiceover actor? Of course, but again, there's so many different steps. It goes beyond luck. It goes beyond, I was in the right place at the right time. That helps. But like you said, if I don't have the right tools in my bag for that session, I'm not getting called back for another session. And I've been booked early on for stuff, and I've listened back to what I was, and I was like, man, I wouldn't have rebooked me either. I mean, I was on with other people, and I could tell that these people were pros, and I was just getting the experience for that day. So, I mean, I understood what it is. I understand the assignment, and I've gone back. One of the things that I found interesting when I was researching you, because honestly, I researched, but you took a giant swing when you were younger. You actually tried to call Mel Blanc, and you actually tried to figure out how to get in and start doing this stuff as fast as you could. Tell me about that, because not everybody has the cojones to just go, I'm going to do it right now and call this person.
Well, I didn't try. I actually succeeded. I didn't know what I wanted to do was considered unusual. My thought was, well, if you want to be a baseball player, call a baseball player. If you want to be a brain surgeon, call a brain surgeon. I wanted to be a cartoon voice, so I thought, I'm going to call it the cartoon voice. And I've told the story a million times, so I'm going to give you a shorter version. But I just researched phone books and found his phone number and called him up.
Mel Blanc. I can't believe his info is in the phone book.
Under his wife's name. I mean, I had a stack of phone books, and I just kept looking under different, M Blanc, Mel Blanc, and I found it under his wife's name, or his wife's initial, E Blanc, Estelle. And, I recorded the conversation. It's on my website. That's completely illegal, but what the hell? I think after 40-something years, the statute of limitations have passed.
It might have just ended.
Yeah, and through the course of the conversation, he just happened to mention the name of the studio he was working at that week, but he didn't say the day or the time, just the name. So when I finished my conversation with him, I called the studio and I pretended to be his assistant so I could get the actual day and time he was recording. And I talked my mom into letting me skip school and go watch him, which I did. And again, I didn't think it was unusual. I'm doing what anybody who has ambition and drive would do, no matter what. I mean, I don't even care. Hey, if you're a kid and you just get turned on by watching the garbage men pick up your garbage cans, you love trucks, watch YouTube. You see little kids standing out front waving at the garbage men because they think it's cool. So, a 14-year-old might call the sanitation department and say, can I ride along? That's what you do, what you want to do. But the problem is when you become an adult, you lose inhibition. Well, when you're 14, what do you have to lose? Nothing.
It's shot in the dark. So when you actually were able to have a conversation with him, what was he like? Was he a really nice guy? Did he give you any piece of nuggets that you still carry to this day? What did he give you? What evolved? And I mean, A, you had a phone conversation, and B, you actually spent a day watching him work. So
yeah,
when you're going through those, what are you learning, and what are you ingesting with that?
Well, I recorded the conversation, but sadly, half the conversation is missing because the tape broke. Because I listened to it so many times, that it just got stuck in the rotary of the cassette player. But a buddy of mine several years ago spliced it back together and kept what he could and digitally enhanced it. The first thing he said was, "How'd you get my number?" And I told him. And then he asked me if I've created any voices. And even though my goal was to one day play Porky Pig, I never told him that because I thought that was rather presumptuous and rude to say that to the guy who created the character. And he, I think towards the end of the conversation, he was like, it's a really tough business to get into. How old are you? I said, I'm 14. He goes, well, it takes an awful long time. And so I wanted to change the subject because I didn't care about obstacles. I wanted to know how you do it. So I changed the subject. Did you need an agent? And he goes, I did, but I didn't have one. If I'd had one, I would have gotten in faster. So my first thought was, well, I need to get an agent. So watched him work about, 3 days later, and then got home from that session and called Hanna-Barbera. And I got to the head of casting, and she referred me to some voiceover classes. So I just started studying voiceover at 14.
Wow. That is unbelievable. That is, let me ask you this one, because it peels back another layer of the onion. What was it about Porky Pig? Because if you're going to give me a list of everything that Mel Blanc ever voiced, I think for me, I think Porky Pig would be maybe 6 or 8 on that list. I mean, I think we all want, I want to figure out how to do Bugs number 1, and I want to figure out Daffy number 2, and it's interesting that you went right to the Porky Pig and said, I want that one.
I found the character comedically brilliant. I loved that as he was stuttering, all of a sudden he would ad-lib something totally different than the word he was going to say. I could appreciate, I mean, there's some, you're born with timing, you're born with pitch. I was born with really good comedic timing. So I was able, like the Marx Brothers, like Abbott and Costello, I appreciated their timing, their comedic genius. I was able to appreciate Porky Pig's comedic genius. And, you know, I have a little tape recorder in front of the TV, and I would record these cartoons, and I would listen back, and I would go, oh yeah, there's a pattern, there's a formula to how he talks. And I would try to mimic it and really try to hone it and fine tune it. I think the only, I'm asked this question, probably this is the most common question I get, why that character? Because I resonated with it. You know, why would somebody say, man, I want to do Broadway musicals and I want to do Sondheim. Why Sondheim? Well, because I resonated with Sondheim more than Rodgers and Hammerstein. So, you know, I just connected with it.
You and I had a session, we can reveal it as well. You coached me yesterday, and it was an awesome session. So if people out there are serious about doing voiceover stuff, Bob Bergen there's a waiting list out there, and if you can find someone to recommend him in, he is definitely a man who wants to do that. You and I had a really good chat yesterday, and something that I found that was interesting, and I'm wondering if it translated it too, was that we did a session where you were telling me you gave me a character, and I had to actually come up with pretty much what he was, who he was, a scenario all in my mind, and act off of that. And that was what we worked on, and it was phenomenal, and it's something that I will take away. I love nuggets from every coach I've ever worked with. The hardest part that you did is that you took a character that's already established and what it is and who he is and everything of that nature. When you're about to take on a character like that, are you putting your own personal spin on it, or are you just trying to take what the actual torch was and extend what that is? Or are you trying to, it's funny to say it out loud, did you evolve Porky Pig, or are you just kind of playing the same role that you thought Mel would have wanted you to play?
First of all, Mel Blanc never pops in my head, never did, because I can't come close to his genius. None of us do. So my whole goal has always been to uphold the integrity of the character, but not try to be Mel Blanc, because I can't. Early on, when I first started getting hired, Warner Brothers would play me about a 12 to 15 minute recording, a sample of Mel Blanc, just to get me, I guess, motivated. Now, the problem was it was a little bit of Porky from the 30s, from the 40s, from the 50s, and even from the 60s. And I would say to the heads of Warner Brothers, which one do you want? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, Mel Blanc, who, by the way, wasn't the original voice of Porky. He took over from an actor who really stuttered. I said, that was Mel trying to mimic the original guy. And then about 3 years later, he started to own the character. But every director, Friz Freleng, Chuck Jones, Bob Clampett, Robert McKimson, they all had their own interpretation of what each of the characters are, from their look to their sound to their personality. So I said, what for each job, what do you want? They didn't know how to answer this because they had not researched the character as thoroughly as I had, which was fine. So if I'm not told, here's what we want, my sweet spot for Porky is about 1953 to 1956 Chuck Jones. It's Drip Along Daffy. It's Duck Dodgers. It's Robin Hood Daffy. That's the Porky that I think of as the epitome of Porky in character. However, like we just came off of doing 5 years for HBO Max called Looney Tunes Cartoons, which was an homage to about 1942 Bob Clampett Porky. We'd never done that since I've been doing the character for 30-something years. That was a blast because that was a style I had never had a chance to do. And then we did a show called The Looney Tunes Show, which was like a sitcom with the Looney Tunes, completely their take of what the character was. So you have to bend to whatever the producer, the network, whatever they're doing with that character. But So my job is to please them, is to give them what they want. Like we just said, I have no problem saying, can I try one just for myself? And they never say no. But I've never felt, oh my gosh, the pressure of keeping up this character, because I don't own the character. I just try to do my best.
How many times did you try going for Porky Pig before you actually got it?
I still audition for him.
Interesting.
None of us who do classic characters have a lifetime contract.
Really?
Nobody. No, of course not. Of course not. Mel Blanc basically had him by the short hairs. No. They never want that again. So I will tell you, there are times when just say, hey, yeah, you're working Thursday. It's a commercial. It's a toy, whatever. Or, hey, there's a new whatever, and they want you to audition. I will tell you this, that I've gotten to a point in my life and career where I won't audition again. I put together about a 2.5 minute sizzle reel, which is sort of like my best as Porky over the last 34 years. And within that reel, 4 of those clips were Emmy nominated. So I figure, yeah, I'll let that be my audition from now on.
Interesting.
But no, I have decided in my old age, I'm tired of auditioning. I got 34 years of content, hundreds of episodes. They can pick from that.
When you're doing different kinds of voices, have you just sat in a room and done a zillion different kinds of different voices? Or when you're looking at a script, do you make it up right then and there? Is there a thing where you're like, oh, I have this voice, I've done it, but I haven't done it on this one? Or are you looking at a script and going, here's something brand new I've never done before? Are you premeditated that way? Or have you gotten to the point where your skills are, I got a new voice, I'm just going to lay this down?
The answer is both. So for instance, if I'm doing an episode of a cartoon I'm on, and let's say it's the holiday episode, and let's say that they need an elf, Santa's elf, and it just says happy-go-lucky, wonderful, typical elf.
I'll just do a typical elf. I'll just do a voice like this. Hi, Santa, what are we doing? Building toys. Oh, boy.
But then if it says it's more of an Adult Swim cartoon, it's Santa's elf, but he's always drunk.
Well, take the elf voice, but I'm just going to make a little bit. Hey, Santa, how are you?
Same voice, but I adjust it. I adapt it to what they're looking for. If they say it's an elf, but he's an old elf. He's the king of elves, but he's been Santa's head elf for the last 300 years.
I'll start with my little elf, and then I'll make him an old elf. Oh, hello, Santa. How are you? What do you want this day? Oh, your toys. How are you? What are we doing this year for toys, Santa?
So you take your tried and true. We have a Rolodex in our head of, go-to characters. But then you look at the description. You look at the other characters. You look at the story. And you start building based around the specs and the information that they give you. But it always starts with, well, what can I bring to the table right now? And, when it comes to an audition, you do all of that. I'll print up my scripts. I go into the booth and I push record. And I always record everything, including what I'm trying out, because magic happens when we're preparing. I don't have a rule. But I do, I've got a few rules. One of my rules is I've got to bring more to the table than just a voice. It's a character. All characters have a voice, but not all voices have characters. I've got to build backstory like you and I were doing when we coached yesterday. Build backstory, build relationships, create the scene that you're in. Think about the environment, perform to that environment, not to the mic. So, but that stuff is knee-jerk instinct for me at this 42 years in this business. But a lot of it is instinct and a lot of it is fear. The scarier the character, the more creativity I'm going to put into it, because
scarier as in like a scary character or a scared character. Like I'm scared of what's going on.
There's just
more evil.
I don't know, as an actor, I don't know what to do with this. I haven't a clue what to do with this. They don't get. So then I go, well, to heck with the specs. I'm just going to give them I'll give you an example. Years ago, my agent sends me this audition and their prototype is James Earl Jones. And I called her up and I said, have you ever heard me talk? I mean, I would love to sound like James Earl Jones, but this guy is not James Earl Jones. And she said, I know. They don't know what they want. Make it your own. That is the advice I would give to everybody auditioning for anything. Make it your own. Don't mimic what you think they want. Make it your own.
Well, then let me ask you this. What did you do for that audition? If you can remember off the top of your head, what did you give them that was in the vein of James Earl Jones, but you made it your own? What did you do?
Well, they said it was a cold and calculated villain. Very confident. So, James, I'm getting close to the mic right here, but James Earl Jones, which I can't do, but I can do me. I can do my own voice. Right about there, being very cold and calculated. So that's what I did.
Wow. So it's so interesting to learn these different techniques because, I mean, if anybody ever starts off doing voiceover stuff and wants to start doing it's always commercials. It's always, I got to add to commercials. And I've paid thousands of dollars. I've traveled to California, back to Chicago. Before Zoom and the internet and virtual was a thing, I would fly out there. And I would stay with a buddy, Bill Ratner, I told you before, who's the voice of a lot of stuff. And he would just introduce me to coaches and introduce me to people. I would watch him go, and I would just kind of practice with him. And I paid so much money to have the broadcast sound knocked out of me and limit the voice. Kind of do what you just did there, just kind of strip it all, just nice and quiet. But yesterday, I used so much of my voice with you that I woke up today like, ooh, I got to work at it. I had to like spray my voice with all kinds of sprays that I would normally do to kind of warm up for a session afterwards because it wasn't used to being used in so many different ways. And I loved that because I was able to go back to, it was actually the point where my wife and my son were here. I didn't realize that my wife was trying to take a nap in the next room, but my son was in the front room playing a video game. And what you had me doing is I woke her up. My son.
Oh, all that screaming that you did?
My son thought that because my wife was in the room next to mine, he was under the impression that I was screaming at her and we were fighting. So he got all freaked out and I had to come out.
That just shows the authenticity in your scream.
And she got mad at me. She's like, you can't do that when we're here again. I'm like, no, but you bought it, which means I was actually doing what I was supposed to do. And she's like, can you do it at a time when we're not here? I'm like, that's a deal. That I can do. But at least I nailed what I was supposed to nail. So, I mean, your anger is perfect because I actually figured it out.
Good for you.
I was like, I'll take the compliment. I didn't mean to scare my son, so I took him out for ice cream afterwards. I was like, all right, Daddy's not mad. In fact, you can help me because of some things that you and I were talking about. Let's transition over to another iconic person that you were doing, Luke Skywalker, another character that is cemented. That there is, I mean, Mark Hamill. That Mark Hamill. I almost said Hamilton. Mark Hamill and all kinds of other people have taken swings at that one, and you have to stay to the brand. Again, you've done characters where you've had to kind of become your own, but it sounds like a lot of the guys that you've really done well are ones that have already been laid out for you. How hard is that to go from there and extend what that is? Because if I'm playing a video game, my son and I, we play video games, and we're always like, man, can you believe how real that is? That sounds like them. Usually it is that person we're playing, but you have to encapsulate what that person is. How hard is that side of it? Not only getting the voice down, but the mannerisms, the characteristics, the resonating of his voice, and just those types of, like I said, you have to pretty much steal what he's doing and give that authenticity to a gamer. How hard is that?
Well, I turned down the audition because I said to my agent, I can't do Mark Hamill. And my agent said, okay. And she calls up the guys at LucasArts and turned it down. And they called her back and they said, no, we've heard his demo. There's a timbre, there's a sound that's very similar. So we'd still like to see him. And my agent's like, you want to go? I said, I'll go, but I'm not right for this. So I walked into the audition and I said, guys, I can't do Mark Hamill. And Dara O'Farrell, who I adore to this day, who was producer director for all the games I did, he said to me, don't do Mark Hamill, do Luke Skywalker. I went, oh, okay. Now here's the problem. I mean, I'd seen the Star Wars movies. At that time, there were 3 of them. But I'd never memorized them. I was more of a Star Trek fan than a Star Wars fan. I didn't really know that much about the folklore. I didn't really know that much. I didn't know Empire Strikes Back versus Return of the Jedi. I didn't know which came first because I never really was a diehard fan. So Dara was explained to me there's pre-Jedi and post-Jedi Luke. And he would play me some voice prints of Mark, pre-Jedi, where Luke was kind of a little whiny. He was a kid. And then post-Jedi Luke, where he got more grounded. May the Force be with you. So we played with that sort of thing. And then I guess I got some callbacks and I booked my first game. Oh, but before I did my first game, I told my agent, she says, hey, they want you to do this game. I said, not until you call Mark Hamill's agent and get his blessing. Because I didn't know if Mark Hamill, I didn't know if Mark Hamill was like in a negotiation and asking for too much money.
Oh, okay.
Or if they were going to hire a scale plus 10 actor to take over the part for this one game, which I thought was tacky. So I said, look, he's Luke Skywalker, so I'm not going to take this job if he wants it. And whatever he wants to get paid, they should pay him because he's freaking Luke Skywalker.
Right.
He was not interested at that time. He was trying to distance himself way before the reboot or the relaunch of the series of movies. So yeah, when I found out that he was not interested, I was happy to do it. But that's just a lesson to everybody watching this or listening to this. Man, there's a code. You don't go after somebody else's job. And if they're holding an audition for something that's out there that somebody's done, we're all available on social media. Find out what the deal is. Like The Simpsons, they've auditioned to replace the cast of The Simpsons multiple times, each time during a negotiation. No. Someday you're going to hopefully have a character that is so successful, you're going to try to get more money. And you don't want your contemporaries, people trying to break in to get your job. So reach out to your fellow actors if this audition pops up. And if they say, yeah, I'd prefer you not to do this, tell them you got it. I won't do this.
Let's go a little more inside baseball. And this is something that I always ask. I've asked musicians this. I've asked voiceover people. I've asked radio this. And it's something that I'm always more fascinated with. And maybe I might be one of the few. What do you do to take care of your voice? Because I've done e-learning stuff. I've done audiobooks. I've done I get a lot of radio station voice stuff that I do. I do a lot of branding for radio stations. And whenever they've given me like 5 or 6 pages of single space stuff, my voice is cached. And I have a whole routine of things that I got to do to get my voice ready for a session like that. The things that you're doing, you're stretching your voice all kinds of different places. What do you do, except for the fact that you said you don't smoke and you don't drink? What do you do to take care of that? What do you do in preparation?
No. I drink. I just don't drink at this time of the day. And I smoke cigars, but I smoke maybe one cigar every 3 months, and I don't inhale cigars. So first thing is I don't even do an audition that calls for screaming, and those are usually games. I don't do 9 out of 10 game auditions because I'm not going to lose my voice for scale. That's number one. Number two, reading for 4 hours in my own voice, or even as Porky for 3 hours, I'm not going to stress my voice. I'm not going to lose my voice because I guess I got strong vocal cords. So using my voice has never been a problem. So other than choosing not to audition for like a game that's like, soldiers screaming and all that stuff and death, I just won't do it because it's not worth losing my voice for.
Do you do any kind of tea? Do you take really hot, steamy showers in the morning? Not that I want to know the intimate details, but
I don't warm up. I don't do anything.
You just go.
I pour a cup of coffee. I come into my office. I see what my auditions are. I print them up. I push record. I go in the booth. I mean, that's just, I think, the way I'm built. I've got friends who they have to wake up 2 hours before a session because they've got morning voice. The moment I wake up, I've got the same voice I've got with you right now. But that's just me.
Interesting. And I have more, so I try to steam it out and kind of warm it up a little bit before I go. But I get a lot of that one. All right. White whales. Is there any voice that you're like, I'm chasing after? Is there a cartoon that you wish you could be on? A Family Guy, a Simpsons? Is there anything that's still, because you've done so much in your career in terms of iconic characters and all kinds of fun stuff. Is there a couple that are like still out there that you're hunting for, or are you just kind of trying to have fun?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is, unless I'm psychic, how would I know what that character is? So I audition every day, just like everybody else. And if I get a really cool, fun audition and I'm like, ooh, that one looks like it's going to be a biggie, I want that. But I won't know it until I get the audition. Now, because my real name is Bob Berger, somebody had my name when I joined SAG. I told you that yesterday. I'm dying to do Bob's Burgers, but I've tried that angle with the producers. Hey, my real name is Bob Berger. Well, they don't care.
No.
So, yeah, the thing I really want to do next is the thing that I get next. I won't know what that is until I get it.
So there's no I would love one shot at Family Guy. I would love one shot at, working with this iconic kind of already made cartoon or anything that's out there right now.
No, because I don't watch cartoons. I would
the cartoon himself does not watch the cartoons. I like it.
No, I don't. No, I do. It's sort of like, if you're a doctor, you're going to come home and watch Grey's Anatomy. I do this for a living. I can appreciate cartoons. I grew up watching, loving the old black and white Popeyes and the Looney Tunes and Speed Racer and stuff like that. But if I get an audition for like a Family Guy or a Simpsons or something like that, that'd be great. That'd be fun. I would love to be a regular on one of those shows. I'm not stupid, but I'm not sitting here going, oh, please, Seth MacFarlane, hire me because I should do your show. No, I don't have passion to be on one specific show. I just like to work. I don't care what it is. I like to work on animated features. I like to work on toys. I like to work on preschool stuff. I like to work on superhero stuff. I don't think there's a genre of animation I do not enjoy doing when I'm doing it. Most of the time, it's just a job. That's it, just a job. The writing isn't spectacular. It's just a job. And every once in a while, I'm doing that thing where I'm like, oh my God, this acts itself. It's so well written. These people are just such a delight to work with. I want this to go 25, 30 years. Sometimes it only goes one episode. Sometimes it only goes one season. But man, when you get that property, that content, that's like, holy crap, I'm doing this. This is so cool. And most of the time when I've done those jobs, you wouldn't even know what they are because they weren't mega hits.
Interesting. One of the other things I've found that people who do the kind of genre stuff that you are a giant hit at Comic-Cons. People come to you, they look for, they want to meet the voiceover actor, and you can pretty much make a whole other side living just off these Comic-Cons. I've been around other voice actors. I was around George Lowe, who was Space Ghost, and I watched him cash in on these things. What's some of the more strangest, funniest fan interactions you've had when you encounter people that are like, oh my God, you're him?
Well, it's interesting because I don't do many of them. I turn down more than I say yes for because it's giving up a weekend. And I like my weekends. I'm actually about to go to Florida to do San Diego Comic-Con, the cruise, which is their first Comic-Con cruise. Now, it's leaving out of Tampa, so I'm not quite sure why they're calling it San Diego, but I think it's the brand of the
Yes.
San Diego Comic-Con. So when I first started doing these conventions 25, 30 years ago, we don't assume people know who we are. We're voice people. I'm not an on-camera actor. So when people knew who I was and people knew what my body of work was, and this is before the internet, it blew me away. People meet you and they're shaking like they're meeting the Beatles. And as far as they're concerned, whatever they're a fan of that you do, for that weekend, you're the Beatles. And at first I thought they were punking me. I thought they were making fun of me. I thought they were joking. Then I realized, oh no, these people are diehard fans. And one of the things I do love about these conventions is that fandom. It's hard because sometimes all you want to do is get to the men's room because you got a 5-minute break, but getting there because people notice you. And I can't walk past them and say, excuse me, but I must pee now. I have to actually respect and honor them and give them that moment that they came there for, because these are people who are responsible for me being able to buy the house I'm in right now. God bless these people. So watching the shaking and the nervousness at first was something I had to get used to. I've autographed various parts of people's bodies.
Wow.
I've had people come back, 5 years later and show me that they had what I wrote tattooed. That's interesting. People are always auditioning for me with my characters and asking me, how did they do? Well, my first response is always, I don't want to, hurt them or break their heart. But I usually say to people, my goal is that you're not very good, because I want to keep my job. But I will tell you this, some of the people are damn good. And if they really are interested, and if they have a work ethic and they are willing to go the distance, I'm going to give them the same advice I would give a paying student. Here are the websites you need to look at. Here are the books you need to read. Here are the people you need to study with. Here's my email address. After this weekend, pop me a note. I'll send you more stuff. But I'm going to be honest with you. If you're not willing to put in the work that I did, the people that I know every day who did, then don't waste your time. Find something else in life you're willing to work that hard for, because this is difficult. But if you really want this badly enough, you're going to do whatever it takes and more than everybody else to make it happen.
Interesting. That's really good stuff. Anytime you've met a famous person that's been a fan of yours, have you ever had an interaction? Have you had a Mark Hamill go, wow, that's damn good? Or have you met any celebrities or people that are all of a sudden like, I did not expect this person to say they were a fan of mine?
Well, he wasn't a fan of mine. He was a fan of Porky Pig. We did a show called Duck Dodgers several years ago. Me and Joe Lasky. I was Porky. He was Daffy. And they had a lot of stunt casting. And they brought in Quentin Tarantino.
Wow.
To play one of the guest voices. And he comes in with a Fred Flintstone t-shirt. And he walks in and he is literally like a Comic-Con fanboy. And he comes up to both me and Joe and he's shaking as he shakes our hand. And he goes, I'm such a huge fan. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm in this room. I'm at Warner Brothers right now and I'm working with Porky Pig and Daffy Duck. And he goes to his little music stand, he puts on his headphones. And I said, before we start, can I just give you just a little bit of information, sir? You're Quentin Tarantino. And he goes, I know, but you're Porky Pig and Daffy Duck. I said, no. You do not understand what I'm saying. You're Quentin Pulp Fiction Tarantino. Why are you so giddy? He goes, I'm living a dream right now. I am doing a job with Looney Tunes. And I looked at Joe, who's Daffy, and I said, this is surreal. About a week later, I'm at a deli in Studio City called Jerry's Deli. And I saw Quentin Tarantino in a booth having lunch with a lady. And I walked up to him and I said, Mr. Tarantino, you may not remember me. And he goes, oh, this is Porky Pig. And he goes, do you want to join us? Would you like a pickle? And I said, no, I'm having lunch. I just wanted to say the man never knew my name.
That's awesome, though.
He never knew my name.
It's awesome.
But he was so excited to work with me. I get that a lot, especially when we do something with a guest star. I was speaking about Mark Hamill. I was at a studio waiting to go in to do a Looney Tunes session. And Mark was in the waiting room. I said, what are you here for? And he said, what he was here for? He goes, what are you here for? I said, I'm here for a Looney Tunes job. And he goes, oh my God, I would love to do something with Looney Tunes. I said, really? He goes, yeah. So I go into my session and my producer, Matt Craig, and voice director, Colette Sunderman, I said to Matt, Mark Hamill's out there and he really wants to work on the show. And he goes, Mark wants to work on our show? I said, yeah. So a few weeks later, I find out that they wrote him a part. But I wasn't in that episode, so I didn't get to work with him. But see, that's
that guy owes you at least a lunch for doing that. That's incredible.
But here's the deal. My point is, no matter who you are, no matter what your body of work is, we all just want to work. We all just want to have fun. And you would be surprised how many major celebrities. I was on the board of governors at the TV Academy for 10 years, and I just rubbed elbows with Emmy winners and Oscar winners and nominees. And how many people would come up to me and say, can you get me into voiceover? How do I get into doing voices for cartoons? Everyone tells me I've got a great voice, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah.
All right. Well, let's get over towards the Bargument side of this thing, because this is where we get to have a little more fun and you can step outside of yourself for a little bit.
Okay.
And we can throw some questions your way and
go for it.
We volley it. Besides yourself, and we can even go the best of all time, the classic. Who are the top 3 voiceover talents, cartoon voiceover talents of all time?
Mel Blanc, Dawes Butler, Jim Foray.
Wow.
And if you gave me more than three, I would add on to that. But those are the three that popped into my head.
I would have to go Mel Blanc. Definitely going with Dan Castellaneta, and I'm going Seth MacFarlane, because those three guys can just do so many different characters that I've loved.
If you had said contemporary, I would have thrown those guys in.
It's okay. It's all like I said.
If you had said four, my fourth would have been Paul Frees.
Paul Frees, yes. There's so many. That's what makes it a good argument, my friend.
Yeah.
But it's funny that Mel Blanc, like I said, it wasn't until years later where the internet was born, and you watch interviews of him, and you just go, "Oh my God, how easily he was dipping in and out of it." That's the one thing I think whenever I've seen any kind of like real session of when you watch like the actor studio of the Family Guy people or The Simpsons, the real ones like Harry Shearer and Dan Castellaneta and Seth MacFarlane and those guys. Just how easily they dip in and out of those parts. Even though, I mean, if somebody were to say, hey, do an impression of Peter Griffin, I have one, but it'll take about 3 seconds for you to be like, oh, yeah, okay, and then you just get into it. But the way they just go in and out of it, like they're just taking a deep breath. To me, that's always the most amazing thing.
If you were to watch an old rerun of a talk show from the 60s or 70s, and they've got Fred Astaire or Sammy Davis, and like, can you give us a little soft shoe? They wouldn't hesitate. They would just do it. Why? Because that's what they do. This is what we do. And anybody who's a wonderful singer, anybody who's a wonderful painter, give them their canvas and their palette and their brush, and they're going to do what they do well. That's what talent is.
Well, to me, that always signifies just how blessed. All right, another Bargument your way. You can throw anybody in there. Who is the greatest cartoon character of all time?
Yeah, the Porky Pig, of course.
Because it's you, I will definitely. It's hard to argue with if you can.
No, not because it's me. Because he's charming. He's humorous, and it doesn't wear pants.
Well, as Porky Pig, allow me to ask you a question I've always wanted to ask him. What's your favorite season? Duck season or rabbit season?
Oh, that's easy. That bacon season.
And if Porky Pig was going to be stuck on an island with anybody, who would he want to be a cartoon character? Would he want to be Daffy Duck? Would he want it to be Bugs Bunny? Would he want Elmer Fudd? Would he want Speedy Gonzales? Who would Porky Pig want to hang out with? Who's his best friend on that show?
I'm going to answer as me, but I'm going to answer as Porky first, then I'm going to tell you why as me.
Okay?
Definitely Daffy.
And the reason is because Porky didn't do any cartoons with Bugs.
Oh.
Or Elmer Fudd. It was either paired with Daffy or a mute Sylvester. But he didn't do any other pairing. And he had great chemistry with Daffy.
That's interesting. That is interesting. Out of the two, the combo characters, cartoon characters, who's the greatest two characters? Is it Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner? Would it be Sylvester and Tweety Bird? Would it be, anybody of those genres? Would it be Tom and Jerry? Or would it be Beavis and Butthead? Who's the best cartoon duo?
I was never a fan of like the Roadrunner and Coyote or Tom and Jerry, perhaps because they didn't speak. I don't know. I just never found that style of comedy interesting. I liked Daffy and Porky, and not just because I do these voices. I just thought, Daffy was a buffoon and Porky was the voice of reason. Whether it was Duck Dodgers or Robin Hood Daffy or Drip Along Daffy. But again, talking about that 53 to 56 Chuck Jones era. Other than that, I like Popeye and Bluto. I like Popeye and Olive Oil.
That's a good one.
A lot of the duets or duos were one-offs. Like, Bugs Bunny and Pete Puma were delightful, but they did one,
Right.
I liked Marvin the Martian and Bugs Bunny.
You did Marvin the Martian, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done Marvin.
I did Marvin in Space Jam. Isn't that lovely?
That is unbelievable. I think we all have a Marvin the Martian impression, but you probably have it way better than us.
Everybody does Marvin to me.
I'm sure.
And I'm like,
Oh, that's lovely. That's delightful. Thank you. Okay, bye.
All right. If you were to pick the worst cartoon character to have as a roommate, who would you not want to have as a roommate, cartoon character-wise?
well, obviously Pepe Le Pew. I mean, let's be honest.
I think Bugs Bunny would be the worst one. That guy's always talking trash. He's always talking trash and getting into all kinds of fights.
Oh yeah, but that's just Bugs Bunny being fun. So Pepe Le Pew for obvious reasons, and then of course Taz would not be fun.
That's true. He would be smashing through everything. You're right. He would be and I would think Yosemite Sam would have a very short fuse. Probably.
Yeah, but he was also a little guy, and he had, I think, a Napoleonic complex, and so I think he was more insecure. And Pepe Le Pew just smelled bad.
What classic cartoon deserves a live-action reboot, and who would star in that?
Well, Popeye could certainly use a better one because the movie they did back in 1980 was dreadful.
With Robin Williams.
Yeah, but he was fine.
I would love to see them reimagine Popeye just a little bit because there's
a horror movie that's
real. That's real. I saw that the license was up and then they were doing it, but I thought it was more of a joke. They're really doing.
No, I think it's called Popeye the Slasher Man, and it's real. It's real.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that one. Who is going to play Popeye for that? Who could be a scary Popeye?
It doesn't matter because it's all prosthetics and, it doesn't matter. I'm not a fan of that, the Winnie the Pooh slasher movies just because a character becomes public domain. They did a Mickey Mouse one too, a Steamboat Willie one. That doesn't, but you know what? If the fans want to see that, that's lovely. Have fun, go for it. But a cartoon that should get a live action, I haven't been terribly fond of the live action, the combo live action cartoon movies that they've done, even the Space Jam that I did.
You did Space Jam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah. But when it came out, I was like, yeah, it's okay. I take it
you weren't invited to those Michael Jordan pickup games that were right next to the lot, were you?
I wasn't even invited to the premiere because when the movie premiered, the powers that be at Warner Brothers told my agent that premieres are only for talent. And my agent was like, what do you think he did? So they eventually invited Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny. And Dee Baker was Daffy Duck, and Dee's wife was nice enough to let me be his +1.
Oh, okay.
And when Dee and I got to the premiere at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, and I'd never been to a movie premiere, they looked at our tickets and they said, "Oh yeah, you guys are down the street in the Overflow Theater." So we had to watch it down the street in a little black box theater.
You know what? I don't have anything that compares to that, but I do remember the one time I got to cover a Super Bowl, and it was when the Bears were in it because I'm in Chicago and I was covering sports at the time, and I was working for a rock station. I was glad I even got the ticket, but I finally was able to get it. And instead of having like an actual ticket in the stadium, I was in a basement with the Overflow media people, and I watched it on a giant screen television. I remember just sitting to myself going, I should have went home after the parties last night. I'd much rather watch the game I'd much rather watch the games with my brother and my friends, and I don't want to sit here with a bunch of strangers and media people all around the world not talking to anybody because they're all busy trying to it's all business. They're all trying to figure out what we're doing after the game, and I'm like, I could use a beer. This stinks.
Well, after the Space Jam screening, we were invited to the after party at Warner Brothers, and Dee says to me, I wonder if there's like an Overflow after party, like in the parking lot for just us. But no, we actually got to do the real party.
Oh, nice. Did you get to meet Jordan or any of those guys?
No, I saw this very tall, bald head walking in the distance, and I was like, oh, I got to go meet him. And so I went running over there, and these giant bodyguards stopped me. And this guy's like, nobody meets Michael. And I'm like, okay, I was Porky Pig and Tweety and Marvin the Martian in the movie. He goes, I don't care if you're Mickey Mouse. You ain't meeting Michael Jordan.
Ah.
All right. Bye.
Bob, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. This was so much fun.
You bet.
All right, that's going to do it for an episode of Barguments. Once again, my name is Dan Levy. Feel free to subscribe, share, do all the fun stuff, give it a 5-star rating, and leave a review. That helps the podcast. Bob, if people want to follow you, social media, they want to get in touch with you via any kind of voiceover advice or anything you want to give out there, what's a good way for people to get a hold of you?
I'm on Facebook. You'll find me there. I'm on Twitter, Bergen.Bob or whatever that it is. I don't even know my handles because I don't pay that much attention, but it's X anymore. I'm sorry, it's not Twitter, it's X. I'm on X, I'm on Instagram. I'm actually in the phone book.
Wow. If you could find one, he's there.
Blank in the phone book. I kept myself in the phone book. I don't even know if they give out phone books. Just call information, you'll find me.
Well, I am more just happy that you and I have struck up some sort of relationship because I think what you're doing is amazing and I'm inspired by you and I'm still trying to do whatever it takes to get in it. So I'm still here. So I appreciate everything. I appreciate the last couple of days and I appreciate you coming on the pod.
Thanks, buddy. It was fun.
Once again, this is Barguments. Thanks so much for jumping on with us. We'll do it again soon. See ya.